Tyrone Bowman live. Welcome to the program, everybody. On this beautiful, cold Monday afternoon. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. I hope it's a good one. All right, let's get down to business. We have a lot of ground and territory to cover on today. So I want to get started. Kind of waiting for a couple people to join me here before I actually start talking about the various topics that I'm going to be talking about. And I will be talking about a lot of information through a lot of various news outlets. Primarily, I'm going to be talking about the manipulation of public perception through the media. The manipulation of public perception through the media. Oftentimes, we have been programmed to believe what we see and don't doubt what we hear. However, when you begin to pull off the mask and the masks and look beyond what appears to be something, there you will find the truth. Whenever someone is desperately trying to stop you from hearing something or stop you from investigating something, that's how you know what they're saying is not true. So, I'm going to talk about several things: Venezuela, the updates, the arraignment of the former Venezuelan president, and so many other things within this next hour here, because it's so vitally important that we're well informed, well educated. Don't you know that when you are well informed, your enemies don't have leverage over you? Many times your enemies don't know as much as you think they know about you because they're bluffing. Because if they did, they would produce the receipts. Like, I live in a world of reality, especially as a law student. I deal with facts. I don't deal with emotions. I don't deal with innuendos. I don't deal with hearsay. I don't deal with speculation. Before I come to this camera, you can believe I have thoroughly researched the topic that I'm going to talk about, and I have thoroughly done my homework, or else I wouldn't come. So let's get down to business. In 1997, there was a movie called Wag the Dog. And the movie basically was a dark political satire, comedy, that explored the manipulation of public perception through the media. And there was a plot to the movie. The story follows a high-stakes cover-up. Just 11 days before a U.S. presidential election, when the sitting president is accused of a sexual scandal involving an underage girl, his administration hires Conrad Brian, portrayed by Robert De Niro. And he was a professional spin doctor, quote unquote, or political fixer to save the campaign. You see that happening in politics today. As soon as a scandal erupts, as soon as something negative begins to surface about a particular politician or politicians, the first thing they do, they go in the spin cycle. They call out the spinsters. They try to deny and deflect because they don't want that particular story constantly being talked about over and over and over again. Then they'll say things like, it's a witch hunt, there's no truth to it, and etc. That's how you know that there is truth to the story, because you keep trying to make it go away. And oftentimes, individuals are afraid. For what? What are you afraid of? Especially if you're involved in the news and journalism business. As long as what you're doing is ethical, is legal, and moral, and you're not using sleazy tactics or break any rules to report a story, you have nothing to talk about. Say, for instance, hypothetically, if I were privy to a news breaking story, I wouldn't necessarily come to the cameras and talk about it until I have discussed it with the person or persons in question. And I would be fair enough and give them every opportunity to be forthright with me. And based upon how they will respond, that's how I would talk about the story. Now let's get back to Wag the dog. So the purpose of Wag the dog and the spin doctor, the political fixer, was to distract the public. Brian decides to manufacture a fictional national crisis. And what was the fictional national crisis? A war. Brian recruits a legendary Hollywood producer, Stanley Motis, portrayed by Dustin Hoffman, to produce a fake war with Albania. Using film studios CGI, which was cutting edge for its time, and staged news footage, they create the illusion of a conflict. You know what illusionists do? Have you ever been to see one like David Copperfield or some of the others? They want you to believe that what you're seeing in an illusionary manner before you is actually real. And it's not real. It's an illusion. It's pretended. Like some people who proclaim that they have the power to work miracles and things of that nature. Now, are there some individuals who may have a gift of healing or working of miracles? Surely there are some, but not everybody. You know, I've seen some people that are real, that have those gifts in their lives. But for the most part, the fakery, the trickery, the chicanery is often displayed before the whole world with such an elaborately produced television production until it's hard to decipher the illusionary method from what is supposed to be real. Now, getting back to media manipulation. So in order to create a fake war, they had to create an illusion of an illusionary conflict. If you don't believe me, go watch the movie Wag the Dog. I've seen it many times. This includes a fabricated war hero, quote, old shoe, end quote, and catchy patriotic songs to stir national fervor. And what was the outcome? The distraction is so effective that the public and media became completely preoccupied with the war, quote unquote, showing the president to be allowing the president to be heroically reelected without ever addressing the scandal. What are you talking about? What people should be talking about in this country is high gas prices, high food prices, high unemployment, homelessness that is running rampant in a nation that's supposed to be a nation of plenty. We should be talking about how Medicaid and Medicare is going to be gutted, scrapped, and torn to pieces by this Republican Senate and Congress. We should be paying attention and talking about the upcoming midterm elections and not what necessarily happened over in Venezuela. How has arresting the former president of Venezuela going to help the American economy and working people and people who are going through trouble? That's a high stakes game right there that's being played out on the world national scene. You got corporate billionaires and billionaires and billionaires. They know what they're doing. The average person may not know what they're doing. And this might have taken some people by surprise, but it didn't take the key players by surprise because they were planning this all the time and they knew exactly when they were going to execute it and how it was going to be about. But here in America, I'm concerned about homelessness. I'm concerned about single mothers not being able to take care of their children. I'm concerned about scammers who are taking abuse, who are abusing the welfare system. I'm concerned about people who come from other countries to America. Then once they get in here, they got the nerve to talk about how rotten, how terrible, and how bad America is when you're just an immigrant from a different country who's allowed to be able to come into this country for the purposes of making money because you didn't come here for anything else. I'm concerned about gun violence and the violence that's running rampant in America. I'm concerned about the drug epidemic, mass incarceration. This is what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the hundreds of thousands of people who have lost their jobs, can't pay their bills. Unemployment compensation is about to run out. I'm concerned about the farming in the community when they basically did this to themselves. The agriculture industry is suffering because they did it to themselves. What about the elderly men and women within our society who are in nursing homes or senior assisted living being taken advantage of every single day? This is what I'm concerned about. Democrats, get your mindset right. Get your head in the game. There's nothing that you can do about what transpired within the last 72 hours. You can holler, you can scream, you can pontificate before the media, you can demand this and demand that. The bottom line is you can't change the trajectory because you don't have the numbers and you don't have the power. Wag the dog. So the title from Wag the Dogs comes from the idiomatic expression, quote, the tail wags the dog, end quote. In the film's context, the dog is the public, and the tail is the media or the political spin. Typically, the dog wags its tail because it's smarter. But if the tail is smarter, it wags the dog. Meaning, a smart controlled part of the narrative is manipulating the much larger whole. Take a look at the major news cycles in America. They all report the same thing, the same stories, the same ways, at the same time, and they never are deviated. And if they get any pushback from the powers that be, they will pull the story back, offer an apology, and keep it moving. Independent news outlets, agencies, and voices, they're the ones basically that are driving the major narratives within the country today. All right, let's talk about what is going on in the news. I've got various news headlines I'm going to go through. From Reuters news agency, Maduro and his wife have pled not guilty to narco-terrorism charges. From CBS News, Delcy Rodriguez is officially sworn as Venezuela's interim president. Who is she? According to NBC News, U.S. allies fear President Trump may target Greenland after Venezuela. From the Wall Street Journal, a mystery trader made $400,000 betting on Maduro's fall. So let's deal with the first story first. According to the Reuters news agency, ousted former president of Venezuela, Maduro, pleads not guilty to U.S. narcotic charges. And here's a brief summary. Maduro, in prison garb, listened to indictments through headphones, captured Venezuelan wife, Celia Flores, pleaded not guilty. Defense lawyer predicts legal fight over military abduction. Delcy Rodriguez has been sworn in as the interim Venezuelan president. Top of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro pleaded not guilty on today to narcotics charges after President Donald Trump's stunning capture of him rattled world leaders and left officials in Caracas scrambling to regroup. Quote, I am innocent. I am not guilty. I am a decent man. I am still president of my country, end quote. Maduro, who is 63 years of age, said through an interpreter before being cut off by the U.S. District Judge Alvin Heatherstein in Manhattan federal court. Well, you see how this trial is going to go down. No matter what he tries to say, they're not going to allow him to say it. No matter what his plea is, ladies and gentlemen, he ain't getting out of it in plain old-fashioned English. He's done. He's not going to be acquitted. There'll be no reprieve. There'll be no pardon. He's not going back to Venezuela to be the president of the Venezuelan people. It's not going to happen. A guilty plea is coming down, and it's not going to take long to find him and his wife guilty. And I do agree, Maduro is not an innocent man. Okay, let's deal with that. Let's put that in the ether. He is not an innocent man. So Maduro's wife, Celia Flores, also pleaded not guilty. The next court date was set for March 17. Today basically was the preliminary hearing. That's where you kind of somewhat lay out your cards and you somewhat show your hand, but you don't want to show all of it. So dozens of protesters, both pro and anti-Maduro, gathered outside the courthouse before the half-hour hearing. That does not matter. It's not going to change anything. Hours later in Caracas, Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, was sworn in as Venezuela's interim president with words of support for Maduro, but no indication she would fight the U.S. move. She better not fight it. They're going to allow you to be president because they believe that you might be a reasonable partner to work with. That's why she was sworn in as the new interim president. Quote, I come with pain in my heart over the kidnapping of two heroes who are being held hostage, she said, pledging to move Venezuela forward in these terrible times. That's going to be the central core of her message. Shed a couple of tears and feel sorry for you, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? Business as usual, we got to keep it moving. Maduro is accused of overseeing a cocaine trafficking network that partnered with violent groups, including Mexico's Sinaloa and Zetas cartels, Colombian, I think that's Farsi or the FARC. That's an acronym for something. I got to find out what that is. Rebels and Venezuela's Trendy Agua gang. He faces 4 criminal counts. What are they? Narco-terrorism, cocaine importation conspiracy, and possession of machine guns and destructive devices. You're done, bruh. You're finished. There'll be no reprieve for you. You're not going to get out of this. Maduro has long denied the allegations, saying they were a mask for imperialistic designs on Venezuela's rich oil reserves. Well, at this point in time, you don't have any say-so about the oil or the reserves or what's going to happen with them. Trump has made no secret of wanting to share in Venezuela's oil riches. U.S. oil companies' shares jumped on Monday, fueled by the prospect of access to those vast reserves. There's no prospect in it. It's a done deal, y'all. It's going to happen. The petroleum business will be booming. Did you hear what I'm telling you? The petroleum business will be booming. So world leaders and U.S. politicians grappled with the extraordinary seizure of a head of state. An emergency order in Venezuela, published in Forum today, ordered police to search and capture anyone who supported Saturday's U.S. attack. Let me ask you a question. From everything that I've read over the weekend, it said Maduro was captured without incident, meaning there was no resistance. There was no fight. Why? There's only one way they could have captured him without incidents. Inside job. An inside job. You don't think people have been betrayed before by their own bodyguards in their own inner circle? Indira Gandhi, her own bodyguards assassinated her. Check it out. When the American forces went down into Iran for Saddam Hussein, there was no resistance coming from Hussein's personal elite guards. While world leaders and U.S. politicians grappled with the extraordinary seizure of a head of state, an emergency order, which was published, which ordered a search mission. At the United Nations, the Security Council debated the implications of the raid, which was condemned by Russia, China, and leftist allies of Venezuela. UN Chief Antonio Guterres, I probably messed it up, raised concerns about instability in Venezuela and the legality of Trump's strike, the most dramatic U.S. intervention in Latin America since the 1989 Panama invasion. U.S. Special Forces swooped into Caracas by helicopter on Saturday, shattered his security cordon, and dragged him from the threshold of a safe room. Today, Maduro, his hands zip-tied, and his wife were escorted by armed guards in tactical gear from a Brooklyn detention center to a helicopter bound for the Manhattan federal court. The judge began the hearing at 12:02 p.m. or 17:02 GMT time by summarizing the charges in the indictment. Shackled to ankles and wearing orange and beige prison garb, Maduro listened on headphones through an interpreter. Hellerstein asked Maduro to stand and confirm his identity. He replied in Spanish. The judge told the couple of their right to inform the Venezuelan consulate of their arrest. Well, they already know about it, Your Honor. Prosecutors say Maduro had been involved in drug trafficking from the time he began serving in Venezuela's National Assembly in 2000 to his tenure as foreign minister and subsequent 2013 election as the late President Hugo Chavez's successor. Maduro lawyer Barry Pollock said he anticipated voluminous and complex litigation over what he called his client's military abduction. He said Maduro was not requesting his release, but may later. Flores' lawyer, Mark Donnelly, said she sustained significant injuries, including severe bruising on her ribs, and asked that she be provided x-rays and a physical examination. Federal prosecutors in New York first indicted Maduro in 2020 as part of a long-running narcotics trafficking case against current and former Venezuelan officials and Colombian guerrillas. An updated indictment made public on Saturday added some new details and co-defendants, including Celia Flores. So in the first presidential reign of Trump, Maduro was indicted. This is the second indictment. The U.S. has considered Maduro an illegitimate dictator since he declared victory in a 2018 election marred by allegations of massive irregularities. Experts in international law have questioned the legality of the raid, while some condemning Trump's actions as a repudiation of a rules-based international order. In Caracas, senior officials from Maduro's 13-year-old government remain in charge of the South American oil producer of 30 million people, altering between spitting defiance and possible cooperation with the Trump administration. The latter is going to happen. They will become cooperative. American oil companies will return to Venezuela and rebuild the sector's infrastructure, Trump told reporters on Air Force One on Saturday, quote, "We're taking back what they stole. We're in charge," end quote. However, 4 oil industry executives said the Trump administration did not consult major U.S. companies ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, or Chevron Corp before or after U.S. forces seized Maduro. U.S. oil executives were expected to meet Trump administration officials on the Venezuelan plan, and oil industry said on Monday. Venezuela has the world's largest reserves. They have the world's largest oil reserves, about 303 billion barrels. But the sector has long been in decline from mismanagement, underinvestment, and U.S. sanctions, averaging 1.1 million BPD output last year, a third of its 1970s heyday. Trump has threatened another strike in Venezuela if Venezuela does not cooperate with opening its oil industry and stopping drugs. This is going to get much more uglier before it gets better. You know, it's going to get much uglier before it gets better, ladies and gentlemen. But we'll find out how it goes down. Just how the U.S. would work with a post-Maduro government, full sworn ideological enemies, is unclear. Trump appears to have sidelined for now the Venezuelan opposition, where many anti-Maduro activists had assumed this would be their moment. Rodriguez's brother, Jorge Rodriguez, was appointed president of the overwhelming pro-Maduro National Assembly on Monday. He pledged to use all procedures, forms, and spaces to bring Maduro back. Washington's allies, most of whom did not recognize Maduro as president due to vote rigging allegations, had been more muted, stressing the need for dialogue and adherence to law. Trump's raid has created a political storm in the U.S., with opposition Democrats saying they were misled. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was due to brief top lawmakers later on Monday. Now, if that is the case, you automatically knew the Democrats were never going to be consulted. How many more times do the Democrats have to be duped before they realize the only leverage you're going to have is to win back the Congress and the Senate? That's it. Outside of that, your voices are going to be muted. Your opinions don't matter. You can hold all the press conferences, grandstand on the stage. You can say whatever you want. No one's going to listen. You have to take back the House and take back the Senate. That's leveraging power. Outside of that, the synopsis would be, who cares? They don't have the majority. We do. So we're not going to inform them. We're not going to consult them. We're not going to brief them. And if we do, we're going to let you know what we want you to know. Outside of that, you're not going to know anything. 1 in 3 Americans approve, according to this article, of the strike on Venezuela that toppled the country's president, and 72% worry the U.S. will become too involved in the South American country, according to a Reuters IPES poll that concluded on Monday. All right, y'all. For those who are riding the yellow bus to Tyrone Bowman Live, listen to me. This is about money. It's about petroleum. It's about corporate sustainability. It's about billionaires getting even more richer than what they are. That's what this is about. Wag the dog. Wake up. Stop being beguiled. Stop believing every news headline without commentary and analysis to break it down for purposes of clarity. Because you're only going to get the official press releases being read on air by the talking heads who make millions of dollars to follow the status quo. While a handful of conservative figures, meaning MAGA Republicans, have criticized the Venezuelan operation as betrayal of Trump's America First pledge to avoid foreign entanglements. That's just political posturing behind the scenes. They agree 100%. Of course, they're going to come before the cameras and going to lie, express outrage, dismayed. We were misled. We did not know this was going down. Why, this is incomprehensible. That's what they have to do to try to make it look good. But majority of them, they have praised everything that has happened. So that's from Reuters news agency. From there, let's find out from NBC News' headline, as Delcy Rodriguez is sworn in as Venezuela's interim president, who is Nicolas Maduro's former number two. Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in early. This is from NBC, from CBS News, written by Dorte Diaz. Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in early today as Venezuela's new interim president, while her predecessor, Nicolas Maduro, awaited arraignment in the federal court on drug smuggling charges 2 days after he was captured in Caracas by American Special Forces. Rodriguez, who is 56, is a powerful figure and longtime confidant of Maduro, and she has been backed thus far as the nation's new leader by Venezuela's military. She served as Venezuela's vice president from 2018 until this past Sunday. Her brother also holds a senior role in the government as president of the National Assembly. Venezuela's legislature, which has long been controlled by the Maduro regime, she quickly denounced the U.S. operation as a violation of the United Nations founding charter and a unilateral attempt to force regime change on Saturday, but soon adopted a more conciliatory tone. She better adopt a more toned down rhetoric. This is high stakes games here. Nobody's playing. Let me put it in street language. If you're from the hood, you're going to know exactly what I mean. If that's your corner, that's their corner, and the two of you have a mutual respect for one another, you don't go to their side, they don't come to your side, but then you got all the business coming from all directions. Ultimately, one person is going to want to control everything. You may be eating at your table, he may be eating at his table, but guess what? They see all the traffic that's going back and forth, and you know what? One person wants to control it all. You need to read the book called A Coldest Winter Ever. In a social media post following a cabinet meeting, Rodriguez called for respectful international relations between Caracas and Washington and extended an invite for the U.S. government to collaborate with us on an agenda of cooperation. Venezuela's roughly 30 million people face a deeply uncertain future in the wake of President Trump's actions. It was still unclear on Monday how much autonomy Washington will allow the country, given Mr. Trump's assertion that America will run Venezuela at least for some time. Let me break this down. How do you have Venezuela, who's supposed to control the world's richest supply of oil, and you've got widespread poverty in that nation? Why is there even poverty? You have all this oil and you're making all this money. President Trump said Saturday that the U.S. had been in contact with Rodriguez, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Was Venezuela ever great? Because when Chavez was the president of Venezuela, he didn't get no love. He didn't get any love. If she doesn't do what's right, she is going to pay a very big price, probably bigger than Maduro, Trump said. Let that sink in. Secretary of State Rubio indicated in a Sunday interview on CBS News, Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, that the U.S. was willing to give Rodriguez a chance. We're going to make our assessments of people, he said, of the remaining Maduro regime figures still in place. We're going to make an assessment on the basis of what they do, not what they say publicly in the interim. Now what? You know, some of what they've done in the past in many cases, but what they do moving forward. There's a whole lot to unpack in that statement. Speaking on ABC's This Week, the same day, Rubio reiterated, however, that the Trump administration does not consider Rodriguez or any of our cohorts to have any legitimate claim to power in the country. This is not about the legitimate precedent. We don't believe that this regime in place is legitimate via an election, Rubio told NBC. Ultimately, legitimacy for their system of government will come through a period of transition and real elections. It's the reason why Maduro is not just an indicted drug trafficker. He was an illegitimate president. He was not the head of state. Rodriguez was born in Caracas. Her father was Jorge Antonio Rodriguez, a prominent leader of the country's socialist movement that will go on to take power under Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez. The new president's father, however, helped lead the movement before it seized power, and he was arrested for involvement in the kidnapping of American businessman William Nijos in 1976. He died in police custody, reportedly as he was tortured by the previous Venezuelan regime's security forces. His daughter Delcy will go on to study law at the Central University of Venezuela in Caracas, with further periods of education in Britain and France. Rodriguez held a number of positions during Chavez's long term, but she only rose to real prominence under Maduro from 2013 to 2014. She served as Minister of Popular Power for Communication and Information before being appointed as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, a title she held from 2014 to 2017. She also presided over an assembly created in response to mass street protests in 2017, which was widely seen as an attempt to sideline the opposition-controlled National Assembly, Venezuela's legislature, to enable Maduro to consolidate his power. In 2018, Maduro appointed her as Venezuela's vice president, and she remained in that post until stepping in to replace her former boss, as ordered by the country's Supreme Court following the dramatic events of the weekend. In 2020, Rodriguez was also appointed as her country's Minister of Economic and Finance, where she's credited with helping to achieve some progress towards stabilizing Venezuela's sanctions-racked economy after years of soaring inflation. In 2024, the role of Minister of Petroleum was also added to her resume. Despite her very high-profile role in the Maduro regime, however, Rodriguez has not been indicted on any criminal charges in the U.S., though she was hit with sanctions imposed during President Trump's first term for her role in helping Maduro maintain power and solidify his authoritarian rule. Wag the dog. This is part 1. I'll be back later on with part 2. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Never surrender. Never quit.